Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go back in time for a moment. Let's go back to 1977. Are you with me?
Yeah.
That was an amazing year for me because that was the year I auditioned for the Lebanon High School drumline in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Now, I had worked hard all winter long and for years before that. I had put in well over the 10,000 hours that Anders Ericsson says it takes to master something, which was made famous by Malcolm Gladwell. I had to dedicate 3 to 5 days a week in my life for the next 4 years. So when I auditioned in 1977, it was a little bit scary because my high school, the year before, we had won national finals. So guess what happened? I beat out 2 upperclassmen to become the first freshman to ever make snare at my high school. Yes. I want you to think about that for a moment. I'm a baby boomer. I had to work thousands and thousands of hours, bloody calluses in every weather condition possible just to master this instrument and to become really, really good at it. So let's fast forward more than 30 years later. My nephew is sitting in our living room at a plastic drum set playing on a video game called Rock Band. Now, my wife and I, we walk into the living room. He's pounding out on these 5 color-coded pads with the drumsticks, and he's playing Tom Sawyer by Rush. Because I taught him well. I'm a good uncle, right? So I look at Sebastian. I say, Sebastian, shut off the game. We got to go. He says, I can't, Uncle Brad. Now, I lasted 5 seconds longer in that moment than my father would have. My father was very angry all the time. Yes, boomers were raised by angry parents. So, getting back to this, my wife, Norma, puts her hand on my shoulder to calm down. And I said, Sebastian, you don't understand. Your mother's train is about to arrive in 10 minutes. We have to go now. And he says, you don't understand, Uncle Brad. You see that girl playing bass? He points with his chin to the cartoon characters on the screen. She is in Tokyo, Japan. Do you see the young man playing the guitar? Yeah. He's in Paris, France. We agreed to play 3 Rush songs. We're almost done, I promise. As soon as we're done with this song, I'll stop and we'll go. And that's when the gears in my head went because I realized as I was doing research for my first book, this is the generation we're all watching under a magnifying glass and complaining about. And the reality is it possible that they have been changed because of technology? Is it possible that some of their behavior is because of video games and computers? Would you like to go on a journey of discovery with me and I'll show you what I've learned? You want to go? Let's do this. Remember this symbol? This is a symbol that represents baby boomers. It says analog, 100%. And for those of you who don't know what this is a software upgrade to a boomer. Now, 1977, it turns out, wasn't just a good year for me, it was a good year for everyone on planet Earth because everything changed from that moment on. Three things changed the next generations to come along. But the one I'm focusing on is the video games. So let me ask you a question. How do you learn in a video game? Does anybody know? Shout it out. How do you learn? Say something.
Do it.
Just do it. Anybody else?
Keep trying.
Keep trying. What's that?
Just start playing.
You just start playing. The way you learn in a video game is this. You learn the rules and the politics intuitively. You don't read a rule book like the box on Monopoly. You leap in, you make mistakes. The more risks you take, the greater the challenges. Mistakes are the only way you can learn. Baby boomers and Gen Xers, how were we taught? Mistakes, you make one mistake, your career's over. How many of you had mean bosses, tough bosses? Put your hands up. Yeah, you make one mistake. This generation has been taught the more mistakes you make, the more you're going to learn. It's the complete opposite of us. Guess what else you learn in a video game? Leadership is rotational. No one person stays in leadership for any length of time. Your skill set determines what teams you will be on. If your skills do not match up with that team, you are kicked out of that team. It's a peer-to-peer network. The only way you can move up in hierarchy is if you had advanced to the next level. And guess what? Once you storm the castle, you kill the trolls, and you save the princess, forget everything you just learned, because the rules change at the next level. Does any of this behavior sound familiar? This generation has been influenced by not only video games, but from 1984 on, their toys talked to them. Teddy Ruxpin, it interacted with them. Speak and Spell, and the computers came into the household. 1977 is when Magnavox and Atari brought the video game into the home. Now, I don't want you to feel bad for us, because boomers had Pong. That's it. Pong went boop, boop, boop. That's it. But it was such a time suck. You lost track of what you were doing just by getting involved, just by being in the game, learning to play it. But in 1984, something amazing happened. Nintendo and Sega and eventually Sony introduced much more robust gaming into the home. And from that moment on, you had multi-level, multiplayer games with challenges that took 3 years to master. It was an amazing time because, guess what? We can look at the influence from 1984 on the behavior of the next generation. Don't believe me? I want you to look up this article. It's the beginning of Nicholas Carr's work. He wrote the book, The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. And this was the very beginning of it. Is Google making us stupid? It's in Atlantic Monthly, July and August of 2008. And he stated in there that technology changes our brains. It changes us at such a profound level. He actually interviewed sociologist Daniel Bell, and he said, whenever we begin to use intellectual technologies such as computers, machines that extend our mental rather than our physical capacities, guess what happens? We inevitably begin to take on the qualities of those technologies. Video games and the internet and online gaming have been the greatest influence of this generation we call millennials, and it also explains why we have 4-year-old grandkids who want an iPhone instead of a Barbie doll or a G.I. Joe. That's the time period. Has anybody just had their mind blown? Raise your hand. Okay. Now, if you still have doubts, our military discovered that the next generation of soldier is a better marksman. And they couldn't figure out why. They were better marksmen than the previous generations that were raised with guns. It was video games. And that's why they started putting millions of dollars not only into video games, but also, guess what? Our drone pilots, their first platform for flying drones was an Xbox military level gaming station. Yes, a little bit mind-blowing, right? So why am I talking about this? Why does any of this matter at all? How long are we going to resist this next generation and the technology they bring and the capacities and capabilities that they have innately? If you go into our classrooms from kindergarten to 12th grade, and I'm not saying all classes are like this, but we are still utilizing only 2 to 3 learning styles. We're still using technology from 400 years ago. We're applying it to 21st century minds. A young man who's friends with my nephew Sebastian came to the house, and Sebastian has grown up and he's moved out, but he comes to visit once in a while. And Michael visited us as well. And I said, Michael, how's college going? He goes, it's a little frustrating, Uncle Brad. I said, why is that? He said, my teacher is trying to teach me computer science. He's 70. I've been putting together and taking apart computers since I was 4 years old. And he's trying to explain a megabyte to me. We now, for the first time in history, we may have students who are a little bit smarter than the professor on a chosen subject. My mission is from kindergarten to 12th grade, into colleges, in the talent and development sector, all the way to the boardroom. My mission is to help us get into the 21st century. I am passionate about this. I've spent over 20 years researching this since the dot-com era, when I had that first wave of employees that were called digital natives, gamers, whatever you want to call them. They were telling me off in my own company. Imagine a world where a surgeon at the Mayo Clinic can do a hip replacement while the patient is in San Diego. Imagine a world where a drone pilot can operate a robot and it can go into the heart of a volcano while that drone pilot is hundreds of miles away, safely in a bunker. Imagine a world where young adults with autism can communicate with an iPad, or they can use video and multiple choice responses to learn how to interact and operate and communicate in this world. Imagine a world where gamers help solve problems with the AIDS virus that scientists have been trying for over a decade to solve. Everything I just said is happening right now. And why isn't it mainstream? Who's resisting? Join me. Join me in bringing the latest technology from the classroom to the boardroom to talent and development and HR programs in this world. Thank you.